seems like our chances have been written off by quite a few people when doing their predictions. Well, in this video, I'm going to try and tell you why there are reasons why Sunderland can stay in the Premier League this season. Disclaimer before we start. This is saying we can stay in the Premier League. Can and will are two very, very, very separate things. What I'm saying doesn't mean Sunderland will definitely stay up. It doesn't mean that, we won't have challenges along the way, because to be brutally honest, I am expecting it to be a battle of a season. It is going to be ugly. It's going to be probably horrible to watch at the best of times, because we are going to be on the back foot in a lot of games. I'm aware that the gap is as big as it's ever been between the Championship and the Premier League, and there is every chance Sunderland get relegated or in the Championship again in years' time. However, there's a little bit of cautious optimism that I've got that may end up being misplaced, I don't know. But as of right now, I think there are reasons as to why Sunderland can survive in the Premier League, and I just thought I'd try and go through them a little bit, and just to try and give a little bit of positivity out, because, obviously at the time of recording, the Premier League season starts in a couple of days' time against West Ham at the Stadium of Light, which is obviously going to be a pretty big game. The opening couple of games we've got are huge ones, that if we want to be staying in the Premier League, we need to be getting results in games like that. So, but here we go. Let's go through them. So the first reason I think I've kind of got a little bit of optimism as to why Sunderland can stay in the Premier League is, well, the work of Gazolfi, Speakman, Harvey and KLD in particular. Now, we all know Sunderland's recruitment tends to be getting players that are deemed above our station, so to speak. And I think that that's kind of continued really into this summer. And the thing I'm kind of noticing, and this doesn't mean every sign is going to work, but one thing I have noticed, if you look at Fabrizio Romano on Twitter, and you look at when he breaks something to do with the signing that may or may not be happening for Sunderland, the response I see from quite a number of fans, that a number of people who are non-Sunderland fans, who are could be fans of the Big Six or fans of teams abroad, tend to be Sunderland are cooking, Sunderland are doing really well. How have Sunderland managed to get him? Sunderland are staying up. So I believe that if enough people are saying those things, there's obviously a reason why a lot of these players seem to be highly rated. So I'm thinking an example of Habib Diarra. I'm thinking, obviously the big one is Granit Xhaka. I'm thinking of Simon Adingra. I'm thinking, there's a few others I'm trying to think of. Noah Siddiqui, who apparently is compared to N'Golo Kante, or models his game based on that. Now, Robin Roofs, I think, is another one. Now, look, I'm not going to pretend to know much about a lot of these signings. I'm not going to, obviously, Xhaka I've seen enough of, and obviously Adingra I've seen flashes of, but that doesn't mean but obviously I don't know for definite how many of these guys are actually going to succeed. We don't know that. We won't know how they adapt to the Prem. We won't know how they adapt and gel with working with each other. We don't know how they'll adapt to being on the back foot in a lot of games, or the main source of our attack will be playing on the quick transition. So we don't know how that's going to work, obviously, but I do get the impression that enough people rate our business that I think there must be a reason for it. Now, obviously, again, that does not mean that they will succeed. It doesn't mean that whatsoever. But there we go. We'll wait and see with that one. The second reason is kind of really the sort of dismay that is happening at other clubs at the moment, where I'm looking at Brentford, for example, where Brentford have lost Mbeumo, they've lost Norgard, who was their captain, they've lost Thomas Frank, who was their head coach, who was a big reason behind Brentford's success over the last half a dozen seasons, really. Keith Andrews has come in and is a set-piece coach that effectively is a head coach now these days for Brentford. That, for me, strikes me as one that will go either one of two ways. It'll either go fantastic for them, or, as we selfishly hope to give us a chance of staying up, it goes absolutely disastrously wrong. Johan Wissa, at the time of recording, has not left yet, but there's a strong feeling that he doesn't want to play. He's basically doing what Alexander Isak is doing at the Mags, from what it sounds like, that Wissa is wanting to force a move. Now, obviously, I would be absolutely astonished if Brentford don't sign players with the money that they brought in from these guys. And Brentford's recruitment, like Sunderland's to be fair, has been generally pretty good in the last half a dozen seasons. But if they lose Wissa as well as Mbeumo, and then losing their captain, that is a big amount of shoes to fill. That is a lot to have to try and replace. West Ham's another one. Apparently there's a lot of grumblings going on against West Ham at the moment. Wolves, Churnia being the main one up front, has lost them. They've lost their left back to Man City, I believe. They've lost quite a few key players. A couple key players. So I think that this, and again, like I keep saying, but the advantage that clubs like Wolves, Brentford, West Ham have over Sunderland at the minute, unfortunately, is that they are more established than us. And I believe in the pyramid, Sunderland should be ahead of all three of them, because I think we're bigger than all three of them. And in the case of Brentford, comfortably bigger than them. But that obviously isn't how football works. These guys have had years of Premier League money coming in repeatedly, and they are going to have the money to spend. But as Sunderland's also proven this summer, we've had money to spend through. And this is another thing. People say, how can Sunderland afford all these players? Because we're really good at managing our PSR situation. That's why. Then you look at the two teams that came up with us. You look at Leeds and Burnley. Now, Leeds, for me, have done some decent business. At the time of speaking, it looks like they're signing Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who I think, if you keep him fit, I think he's a very good player, actually. But apparently was asking for really high wages. And if that's true, then I'm quite glad Sunderland have stayed clear, because we can't guarantee him being fit. I think Leeds, obviously Sean Longstaff, I don't think is a bad signing for them. Anton Stack comes in with quite a bit of hype around the Leeds fan base at the minute. And then obviously Burnley have signed the midfielder from Chelsea. They've also signed Martin Dubravka from Newcastle, who I actually don't think is a bad keeper. But obviously, I'm aware he's probably going to be a downgrade on James Trafford. But that's not because of Dubravka. It's because most keepers Burnley could realistically sign could be a downgrade on Trafford. I do believe they signed a younger keeper earlier in the window, though, so I might be wrong on that. But my point stands that with Leeds and Burnley, where I have doubts over them is Daniel Farke and Scott Parker. Now, Scott Parker tends to struggle massively in the Premier League. He's done it with Fulham. Obviously, with Bournemouth, there was a limited sample size, but his last Premier League game, he got beat 9-0. Now, to be fair, it was off Liverpool, but getting beat 9-0 is never good, regardless of who it's off. So I would be very surprised if Scott Parker lasts the full season. With Daniel Farke, I'm in two minds about him, because he didn't have the resources at Norwich. I believe that he will do at Leeds, but there's been grumblings on from some Leeds fans I've seen about him tactically not being quite as good. Now, saying that, if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised if both of these guys are out of jobs within the first couple of months of the season. But is that start going to hinder them in a league where they're already going to be up against it? I'm not convinced with either Daniel Farke or Scott Parker, although I do think Leeds have a better chance than Burnley of surviving. I don't think that either of them will end up stepping up to the Prem and will either struggle massively or get fired. And by that point, they could be cut adrift. We don't know. Now, speaking of head coaches, the main reason I want to talk about is Reggie Lebris. Now, it's fair to say I've had frustrations with Lebris. I remember there's been a couple of times when I think he's been too reactive with substitutions and hasn't been proactive enough. But I've got to give him his dues. When it mattered the most, in the playoff final, he did deliver that. He made his subs with about half an hour to go, or at least 20-25 minutes to go, and it was enough time for them to affect the game and help turn it around to help Sunderland get promoted at Wembley. So, and remember, it was in the richest game in football as well, where the pressure's on. Obviously, the momentum Sunderland came up with through the playoffs, which is effectively 3 last-minute winners, where the first one was an 88th-minute winner at Coventry in the first leg, the second one was an aggregate winner in the second leg in the dying seconds of extra time, and the third one was a 95th-minute winner to send Sunderland up. But with Regis Lebris, I think that his style and the way he has Sunderland set up, on paper or in theory, will transition better to the Premier League than what Leeds and Burnley can do. And obviously we can't just finish above Leeds and Burnley, we need to finish above somebody else as well, in addition to that. But, and that's assuming Leeds and Burnley both get relegated, of course. But the point I'm making is that I think with Lebris, when he's shown he's on it, tactically he has shown he can be quite good, actually. And I think that the way that we're setting up in a low block but quick threatening transition, I think we're going to hurt quite a lot of teams on the break, actually. I'd like to think we will. I'd like to think that we will have enough to cause enough problems on the break for teams to make them think, oh, hang on a minute, we can't go full throttle against Sunderland here because they'll leave a lot of gaps. But obviously, again, the caveat to that with a low block, which I do accept, is that if you sit in a low block constantly, then you concede, your game plan's out the window, isn't it? So, but obviously keeping clean sheets in the Prem is going to be considerably trickier than it would have been in the Championship. But I do have a feeling Reggie Lebris could end up winning us a few points across the season. And this is coming from someone who's criticised him for his substitutions thing. But in general, Lebris has got the set way of defending a lower block and then sort of transitioning on the counter. And this time, I think this is why I think we've signed players such as Talby or Adingra and wanting to have Mundle integrated, even though Mundle looks like he's going to be out. But I think as well, it just comes to show that the transition is going to be massive. And another reason, very quickly, which I should have mentioned in the first point about the signings, Granit Xhaka's experience for me, I think, is also going to be another key factor. And trust me, this is coming from someone who feels like the experience thing has been overblown and used as an excuse for the players over the last few seasons. But in the Prem, when we're going to be on the back foot a lot, we are going to need Premier League experience. And I do believe Granit Xhaka is the type of player that we absolutely desperately needed, because not only will he keep things calm enough in the middle of the park, I think just on what I've seen of a couple of his pre-season, he's set piece deliveries, his forward balls when he's in the centre from deep transition playmaker. You know, I think there is something in there with Granit Xhaka, and I just think, and remember if he's signing, then other players are going to go, hang on a minute, like, we could sign for Sunderland here, we could really go and do something there. Or I'd like to think that should be how it works anyway, but we'll wait and see. But there you go, guys. That's just pretty much my main, why I wanted to sort of do a little bit of a video about why Sunderland can stay up in the Premier League. And so quick summary, if you've made it this far, is one, the signings, particularly the signing of Granit Xhaka, I think is important from an experience point of view and what players he can bring in as well. As in, if you're signing that calibre, you could end up bringing somebody else in of an equal calibre or better. Two, because of what's happening at teams around us, I think this, and this doesn't mean they'll all struggle, obviously, but I think we're going to find that quite a few of them might end up not having very good seasons. And three, because of Regis Labrice, because I think tactically, compared to Daniel Farke and Scott Parker, I think he will actually outperform both of them. But there you go, guys. What do you think about that? Now, if you're asking me, if you had to put my head on the spot for a prediction, if we get what we need, which for me is a centre-back, I wouldn't complain at full-back either, right winger and maybe another striker, and they're all of good level, obviously, I've got a feeling we might scrape 17th. My gut tells me we scrape 17th. We could end up struggling massively and finish bottom. We could end up having a blistering season. I've seen a couple of fans on social media saying Sunderland will get top 12. Mate, give me top 17 and I'll be buzzing this season. But there you go. But anyway, guys, look, I love you and leave yous. So, again, everyone knows the drill by now. I think that the analytics show that nearly half of the people who watch me are not subscribed, or at least about 40% of people who watch aren't subscribed. So if you think I've earned it, hit the sub button. Just takes 1 second. As Sean Middleton says, it's absolutely free. Doesn't cost a penny. And yeah, respectfully comment below what you think. Like and share the video around. It'd be much appreciated. And yeah, stay safe. And how are the lads, everyone? Let's make that stadium rocking on Saturday. Can't wait.